Alright, so for this video, we're going to be talking a bit more about that term planes and planar drawing, and so I'm actually going to be using this rock as opposed to our cup this time. And so when we talk about planes, we essentially are talking about each face of the object, and how do we think about that when we draw. And for the most part, going back to one of our previous videos where we were simplifying objects into like cubes, rectangles, circles, cones, things like that, in a very simple way, we're going to do a quick sketch of this rock. Measure. What I really want to emphasize here is the different faces of the object more than anything else. So you can see that there's a rectangular face here. You can even break that down. There's a little bit of a indent in there, but the face there's a face here, and then there's another face here. And yeah, they have rounded edges, but essentially you're drawing a pyramid in one sense. And so a really good idea when it comes to talking about the planes of an object. You can interchange it with faces, but like the faces of a diamond or things like that. But you're basically drawing kind of a pyramidal shape here. You can see there's one plane here, one plane, and we want to emphasize that when we. So in terms of hatching, you can see that there's a face here that we can emphasize, and I'm using those vertical hatch marks. And that's one plane. And the other plane up top here, you could use hatch marks going along the surface of that plane, that face of that area, the rock here for the second plane. And then there's this lighter plane here that you can essentially keep the lightest value. But this is a real dark value. You can really emphasize the darkness. And with these hatch marks, you can really emphasize the verticality of this plane. And that's when you can go in and really emphasize the roundness of the object. You can see that this is really dark, so we can see I'm using more hatch marks in a different direction. You can see there's this area here underneath that's like the darkest. So it's a smaller plane there. Cast shadow. But we're really emphasizing these planes here. And see that shadow goes across, it's rounded. There's a little bit of reflected light here. Remember, we got to keep that reflected light. And yeah, you can just keep working your cross-hatching to really emphasize this darkest plane. See? So you could even say that there's a final plane right up here at the top where all these meet. It's kind of interesting. So there's you could say that where these two edges meet, there's a plane that comes across at the top where the two faces meet here. You can even emphasize this. I'm following this plane where it meets over the top here. Contour in there. And you can kind of decide do you want to emphasize the downward thrust of that plane, or do you want to emphasize the horizontal nature of that plane? It's kind of up to you. You can do a bit of that cross hatching. So this is really just using the three major planes and then smaller planes that can give you more of that, you can emphasize more of those intermediate planes. But as long as you concentrate on the three major planes, just like with shading, the more planes you see, the more faces you see, the more detailed the drawing can be. But essentially this is made up from three basic planes, three different triangular planes that make up a pyramidal shape. And then you can kind of emphasize these other intermediate planes.